Have you ever stood in front of a freshly hung sheet of drywall and just felt that mix of excitement and maybe a little bit of dread? Well, you're not alone. Today, we are going to demystify the art of drywall finishing. We're going to break down what looks like a super complex job into a clear step-by-step guide. The goal? To take you from those bare panels to a perfectly smooth, totally paint-ready wall. So, let's dive in.
All right, let's just get one thing straight right off the bat. As the pro taper Paul Landry says, first time out, you'll probably get more mud on the floor and your clothes than you do on the wall. And you know what? That is completely okay. The goal here is not perfection on your first try. It's all about making progress. And trust me, with the right techniques, you can absolutely get a finish that looks like a pro did it.
So, how are we going to get you there? Well, we've broken the whole thing down into 6 key stages. We're going to start with the why, understanding the different standards of finish. Then we'll get our hands dirty with prep, taping, and coating. After that, it's all about refining our work with sanding, and finally we'll put the cherry on top with texture. This is our roadmap from chaos to craft.
Okay, so before we even think about cracking open a bucket of mud, it's really important to get this one thing. Drywall finishing isn't just, slapping some compound on a wall and hoping for the best. It is a systematic process, and it's actually governed by industry standards that have a big impact on quality and safety. The whole system is organized into what they call levels of finish, from level 0 all the way up to level 5. Level 0 is, well, it's just bare drywall. Level 1 is the most basic, often called fire taping, and you'd use it in places you don't see, like an attic. Level 4, that's the one you're probably aiming for. It's the standard for most homes, smooth and ready for paint. And level 5, that's the pinnacle. That's for those rooms with huge windows or glossy paint where the light would show every single tiny flaw.
And you might be thinking, why does this matter to me? Well, these levels are part of big official standards. This isn't just about making things look pretty, it's about real-deal stuff like fire resistance and sound control. So when you follow these steps, you're actually making your home safer and quieter. Pretty cool, right?
All right, we get the standards. Now let's talk prep. A fantastic finish starts with a solid foundation. And honestly, the most important thing you'll do at this stage is choose and mix your joint compound, or as everybody calls it, your mud.
So you're gonna run into 2 main kinds of mud. First up is setting type, or hot mud. It hardens through a chemical reaction, which means it's fast. You can do multiple coats in one day, and it's awesome for filling big gaps because it barely shrinks. Then you've got your drying type, or all-purpose mud. This one just air dries. It's way easier to sand, which makes it perfect for those final smooth top coats. Most jobs, you'll actually end up using a bit of both.
So the big question is, how do you know when you've mixed it right? Here's a pro tip that just makes it all so simple. When you're embedding tape, you want it to feel like smooth peanut butter, thick and creamy. But later on, if you're going to spray texture, you want it way thinner, more like pancake batter. It's a super simple comparison, but man, does it make a difference.
Okay, mud is mixed and we are ready for what a lot of pros will tell you is the single most critical part of this whole job, embedding the tape. And get this, it's not just cosmetic. This is the structural part. This is what keeps cracks from ever showing up down the road. First things first, you gotta know what kind of joint you're dealing with. Taper joints, where the long factory edges meet, they're gonna be your best friend. They have this little recess that makes hiding the tape super easy. Butt joints, on the other hand, they're the tricky ones. That's where 2 cut ends meet, and there's no recess. So you have to build up a really wide, gentle mound of mud to make that seam vanish.
So here is the sequence, the play-by-play you're going to follow. Start with a nice, even layer of that peanut butter consistency mud. Then center your paper tape right over the joint and press it into the wet mud. Next, and this is key, hold your taping knife at about a 45-degree angle, press down firmly, and just pull. That embeds the tape and squeezes out all the extra mud. And for the final touch, just a super thin skim coat right over the top to lock it all in.
Now, the #1 mistake beginners make is getting bubbles under the tape. The secret to avoiding them is making sure your mud is wet enough and using that firm, even pressure. But hey, if a bubble does show up, don't panic. And whatever you do, do not just try to bury it with more mud. The pro move is to just take a utility knife, slice the bubble open, press it flat, and then just patch over that tiny spot. Easy fix.
All right, your tape is in, it's dry, and now it is time for the magic trick, making those seams totally invisible. And the secret here is all about feathering. We're going to create the illusion of a perfectly flat wall by spreading the mud wider and wider with each new layer.
So to get to that standard level 4 finish, you're going to apply 2 more coats once that tape is set. For your second coat, grab a wider knife. An 8 or 10-inch blade is perfect. And just spread the mud a little past the edges of that first coat. Let that dry, then grab an even wider 12-inch knife for the third coat and go even wider still. It's this gradual layering that fools your eye into seeing a perfectly flat surface. We have reached the stage that pulls it all together. Sanding is what makes all your hard work pay off. It erases those little imperfections, blends all your coats of mud together, and creates that silky smooth surface that's just begging for primer and paint. But hold on, before you start sanding, here's a massive time-saving tip the pros live by. Do not sand between each coat of mud. Seriously. Instead, just grab your taping knife and quickly scrape off any high spots, ridges, or little blobs. It takes just a few seconds, it makes almost zero dust, and it will make your final sanding job so much easier.
Now, when it's time for that final sanding, just keep a few things in mind. Use a fine grit sandpaper, something like 120 grit or higher. Use really light pressure. You're just smoothing the compound, not trying to dig into the wall. And of course, please wear a mask. When you're done, the last step is to wipe down the entire wall to get rid of every last speck of dust. That step is absolutely crucial for a good paint job.
We've made it to the final stage. This is where you get to decide on the actual personality of your walls. Are you going for that super sleek, glass-smooth, modern look? Or do you want a decorative texture that can add a little character and, bonus, hide some minor imperfections? If you're chasing that absolutely perfect, flawless finish, what you're looking for is a level 5. You get this by applying a really thin skim coat of mud over the entire surface of your wall after you've already finished and sanded it to level 4. This extra step gives you a totally uniform surface, and it's basically a must-have if you're using high-gloss paint or have tricky lighting.
Now, a super popular alternative is knockdown texture, and it's actually a pretty simple 3-step process. First, you spray splatters of thinned-down mud all over the wall. Then you just wait for a few minutes until that wet shine disappears. Finally, you gently drag a wide knife over the surface to literally knock down the peaks, and that creates that classic mottled look.
But the real secret to a good knockdown finish is all about timing and patience. Like the pros say, timing is everything. If you try to flatten that mud when it's too wet, you're just going to get a smeared mess. But if you wait too long and it gets too dry, those peaks won't flatten out at all. You have to watch for that perfect moment when the surface goes from glossy to dull. That's your window.
And just like that, we're at the end. You now have the knowledge, the standards, the techniques, the pro tips to go out there and get a truly flawless finish. So the only question left is, what's your perfect finish going to be? Are you going to go for that pristine, modern level 5 skim coat, or the character and depth of a cool texture? The choice is all yours.